Well, kia ora and welcome to Co-op Leader Conversations. I'm Sia Warlick, CEO of Co-operative Business New Zealand, peak body for co-ops, mutuals and member-owned businesses. So far in this series, we've explored co-ops that were born that way, but today is a little different. Today we're talking about an established Kiwi business that chose to become a cooperative and what that could tell us about the future of ownership in New Zealand. In this episode, I'm joined by Norman Woods, CEO of HRV, a household name in New Zealand homes, and we're going to talk about a bold and deliberate decision, converting an established business into a cooperative. We'll explore why HRV chose to change its ownership model, the problem they were trying to solve, how the conversion process actually worked, and what's changed since becoming member-owned. So this conversation is really about ownership as a strategy and what it could mean for the future of New Zealand business. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Norman Woods, the CEO of HRV. Welcome, Norman.
Hi there. Thanks very much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this podcast.
Our absolute pleasure. So we'll dig right in, Norman. And I guess for this first sort of section, we're really interested in understanding the sort of the context and the scale of HRV. So for the listeners that might know the HRV brand, but not really the business structure. So how would you describe HRV today?
HRV is a nationwide healthy homes business that's focused on ventilation and also looks at air conditioning, water filtration, and the overall well-being of homes. We operate across New Zealand through locally owned territories, but under one brand, one standard and one shared purpose of making all Kiwi homes healthier together. So while customers experience us locally, the strength behind it is a coordinated national network with shared systems, shared standards, and now shared ownership, which we're really excited about.
Oh, fantastic. And so obviously, as I mentioned, HRV is pretty much a household name. So when did the original organisation actually start?
2015. And it's gone through an alliteration of different owners. Initially, the original entrepreneurs who established the business, and then there were venture capitalists or venture partners that purchased it, and they did exceptionally well, like the initial entrepreneurs did, and then it was bought out by Vector, the Auckland power grid company.
Right.
And they've owned it for the last 10 years. Oh, sorry, not 10 years, 8 years.
Right. So it's had quite a few sort of, I guess, steps in the evolution to get to the point where you started to look at a cooperative model or cooperative ownership. So at what kind of point in that process did ownership model become something that the team was actively questioning?
It became really active when we realized or knew that Vector was looking to sell the business. They'd received some expressions of interest, and they were looking at selling the business. And we, as leaders within the business, and I'm talking about the corporate management as well as the franchise owners,
right,
started asking, who is this business really for in the long term? We weren't in crisis. It wasn't a reactive decision. It was a really strategic decision that was made with or by the franchise owners and members of the executive team that were running HRV at the time. We were looking at how we could maintain sustainability for the brand, how we could build succession within the brand, and really get alignment. And ownership naturally became part of that conversation. The question really wasn't, can we change? It was, should we change for the better future of the brand and the better future of the people within that brand?
Right. And so, at the time you were going through this process, was the feeling that if it was sold, that the brand may not have a life after that.
No, I don't believe that the brand wouldn't have had a life. I believe the brand would have had a life. However, I think that it would have gone through another iteration of what it had gone through previously under the original entrepreneurs and then the venture capitalists that owned the business at that stage. And there was a nervousness within the business from the franchise owners around what does this look like for us in the future? We have a vested interest. The business is a part corporate, part franchise business. It was a real mix, and they were concerned about their future, as well as leaders in the business saying, "What does this mean for us?" I had no doubt that whoever was successful in the bid for the business would continue the business on as HRV, but I'm not too sure what that business model would have looked like.
And so I'm really curious to understand, how did the concept of a cooperative enter the conversation when you were doing that sort of initial assessment about what could the future look like? How did it come to life inside HRV as a conversation at the leadership table?
I think what was really important was, we had to look at it and say, what do we want as a group of executives and franchisees coming together wanting to purchase this business? And the cooperative model was aligned almost perfectly with our purpose. Our purpose talks about together, and cooperative ownership literally it brings that word to life. And it also allowed us to keep national consistency while empowering local ownership, which I think is critical for HRV today and in the future. And so by having the conversation with the franchisees and the exec team doing the management buyout, we sat down and said, does this business go forward as a franchise, or does it go forward as a cooperative? And the conversation quickly went to cooperative. We all wanted to be part of the future of the business. We all wanted to be part of this business growing and becoming something that we wanted to be, while we all had a stake in strategy and the outcomes.
No, that's fascinating, actually. And I think, were there any skeptics in the room? Like, were there any people that you really needed to convince about member ownership or describe the concept? Or people that were unfamiliar with cooperatives at all?
Absolutely.
Right. So how did you overcome those objections?
Yeah.
Sorry.
One of the things that we pride ourselves on within HRV is the culture that we have. We're really clear on our purpose. We've got really strong values in play, and we have really good ways of working, our behaviors. And part of that is our team model. Our team model is built on trust. It's built on a basis of vulnerability-based trust, and we allow and encourage robust debate. So when we round the table, we have these really strong debates. And change without skepticism usually means people don't fully understand it. But the key for us was transparency. We over-communicated what we wanted to do. We invited questions, and we framed the decision as strategic rather than emotional. There's a misconception that co-ops are informal or slow. In reality, well-run cooperatives are extremely disciplined because clarity is essential when ownership is shared. It's foundational. And once the people in our teams, the people looking at the management buy, understood the why, the alignment quickly followed.
Right, that's really interesting to I guess hear that process talked about from a conversion perspective rather than from a starting up as a co-op, kind of from day one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I guess once you've had that conversation and you've talked it all through and you've been through that initial process to make a bit of a call, I guess then you kind of move on to the technical side of it, which is the conversion process itself. And I'm really curious to hear your perspectives and your experience on what that conversion process actually meant from a practical perspective, moving from your previous ownership structure into becoming a cooperative company.
I think at a high level, it was all about design first and paperwork second. We spent a significant amount of time on the governance structure. We're still spending a lot of time on our membership criteria and operating frameworks before the legal conversion. But, timeline for us needed to be fast, and it needed to happen rapidly because we were in a really short time frame in which we could put in our expression of interest to Vector.
I see.
So,
Right.
it was really important about us, getting the clarity around the design on the table and getting people bought into or understanding that and saying, "Yep, we've got that. Let's run with that." Normally rushing ownership decisions is risky, but
Yeah.
because we had franchisees that were already in that structure and we had managers buying into the business from the corporate part of the structure, it was a lot easier for us. And the timeline to get us to buying the business can be measured in weeks, but I think the conversion process, as we're finding now, is more measured in months.
Mm. And so the design first element of it, where did you go to seek information? Was it with people that you already knew that were in existing cooperatives, or was it sort of like more of a legal partner? What were your sources of information?
It certainly was a wide spectrum. So we had franchisees that had previously operated in cooperatives. We had franchisees that went to and sought advice from associates and friends that were already in cooperatives. I've come previously from a franchise background that toyed with the idea of cooperatives, but chose not to go down that route at that stage. And then added to all of that, we brought in legal expertise as well. And we also sought some external, business advice from business leaders that we know had experience within cooperatives. And so all of that pulled together, as I say, in a really, really short period of time. But it was about balancing that speed with certainty. It was trying to find that balance. We wanted and we needed the momentum, but we also wanted every member or stakeholder to be confident and informed. I think that we went at the right pace with the right amount of information from the right people to make the right decision in the right way. And to date, if I sit back 7 months into the cooperative, we've certainly made the right decision. And we've still got people that we talking to about what the future could look for us. We're talking to legal people. We've joined New Zealand Co-op. We work with. We've done training through Mayfield, And all of that's really important for us as well.
Yeah, I think what you've described there around initially that design first, and then, as you say, thinking about what would help make it successful, and thinking from a governance perspective, the directors getting on the same page through training right from day one is a incredibly valuable approach, and something that we'd certainly recommend as well. In terms of getting an entire board on the same page right from day one, so that you can ask all of the same questions and everybody can hear the answers, and you can learn from others as well as you're going through that training with your peers, really.
Yeah, our model previously of the hybrid mix between corporately owned support office and regions with franchise owned regions created not a tension, but it created a way of working that was very difficult to be able to get us all, working in the same way. Franchisees had a view on what support office was doing or what Vector were doing, and didn't always agree with everything that Vector were asking the business to do. And so there was that. It was a little disjointed. But what was really, comforting for me is that when we sat down and we started talking about cooperative, and everybody understood that they all had a shared stake in this business, a shared stake in the future, and a shared stake in the decision making of where we're going to go, everybody bought into, we're going to go and do this with one way of working, one strategy, one way of working, because we know that that's going to be the best outcome for us.
You're right. And so when you're reflecting back on, you were sort of a few months in, more than 6 months in now, was there anything that was actually harder than you expected it to be? Something that you thought might be incredibly simple, but actually took you by surprise the other way?
I think the thing that's taking a little bit more time, and I thought it would run a little bit quicker, is getting we call it territory agreements together. The cooperative membership agreement, and it's not that we are disjointed or not thinking aligned. It's really just making sure that we get the structure of that agreement that well set, that it gives us incredibly strong guide rails and framework for the future. Whilst we all aligned now, and the initial members that own the business are all aligned, we're not just thinking about today, we're thinking about succession, and we're thinking about future and what that could look like, and how do we structure this agreement that anybody that joins us and joins the cooperative has the opportunity to be immediately embraced as part of the cooperative and feel like part of the cooperative. So that piece of it, the legal work, the understanding of the detail behind that contract, that's surprising me how long that's taking. However, the people we're working with, the experts, are doing an outstanding job, because they're not only guiding us in the right way, they're certainly teaching us all a lot about cooperatives as we go.
Right. No, that's really interesting that it was that element, that took a little longer. And so while we're talking about, that kind of shareholder agreement piece, do you have a vision for how many members you would like to welcome in the future? Do you have like an expansion plan at this early stage, or are you happy to kind of consolidate the co-op as it is for some period of time before looking to expand your membership?
We've got a working agreement that we will not look at expanding for at least the next 18 months, because what we do believe is that we need to get the fundamentals right in our business. We need to make sure that we all understand how this new business operates, and we build ourselves a foundation of strength. And once we're in that position, then certainly we will start looking at expansion. Expansion in an HRV world, I think, could be complicated in that if you want to open a branch and let me just choose a town. If we want to open a branch in Taupo, servicing the central lake, or not the central area of the North Island, I
Yes.
think that the structure of our business with a sales force and a call center and an installation team, it can be sustained in a larger residential area, residential or city, Taupo, Rotorua, it could survive there. However, if we want to open up in smaller areas, I think that we would need to have satellites, and so it wouldn't be a standalone, territory. It would need to be a satellite of a territory. So we are looking at where are the opportunities for territories, standalone territories, and what does that look like. But at the same time, if we want to expand this business into more regional New Zealand, we are going to have to look at satellites. And what we're exploring there is around more looking at the existing members, do a joint venture with somebody, because whoever sets up in a smaller area, they're not going to have the business to sustain a sales force and a call center and an installation team. It would be a pretty small team that would need to rely heavily on a mother territory.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I wonder about, just thinking about that kind of cooperative ownership model, your founding members that you started with. Do you think, because of the knowledge and sort of experience in a franchise type environment, do you think that was an easier step into a cooperative than it would have been in, say, for example, a professional services firm with directors that might want to become member owned?
Really good question. I think it was easy for us. I think the transition was easier for us because we had spent so much time over the last 3 years, 4 years in HRV, building a really strong culture of making sure that we understood what the intention of the business was, and being really clear about how we go about our business, and having really strong visible leadership within that business. And because we had that mix right next to our team model of high trust, robust debate, ownership or commitment and ownership, and utilizing results to fuel that continuous improvement loop. Moving across was easy for us because once we'd had the debate and we'd made the decision, everybody committed and owned. And we know that we'll utilize our results, be it financial results or our people and culture results or health and safety results. We'll use those to bring us back to conversation and growth. So I think that was more of a win for us. That foundation was more of a win for us than whether we'd been franchisees or corporate previously.
I see. Okay, that's really interesting. And I'm also wondering as well about your next sort of 18 months to 2 years. What will your members say is a success for them in converting to a co-op model if they're in 2 years' time sort of looking backwards and saying, okay, we believe this was the right choice for us because of these particular reasons?
I think that the members would sit back and view success as we decided on a strategy for the business. There was good consult. There was a sign off of the strategy from the board, and as members, we then stepped out of our board roles into our operational roles and executed with excellence. And we're seeing the results of financially good results. Our people and culture metrics are good. We're maintaining and attracting talent
Yes.
in an engaged team. Our health and safety measures continue to be good. And I think if they have all of that and they see the wealth of the business growing, and they see the brand equity growing, I think they'll see that as success, because they would have played a huge role in that from woe to go to execution.
Okay, no, that makes complete sense. So I guess going through this process of converting from an organisation, a company, into a cooperative company, did you come across are there any common misconceptions that you would like to clear up about co-ops now that you've been through this process?
Yeah, I think the one I spoke about initially, people think that co-ops are informal and slow, but the truth is that in New Zealand we have exceptional cooperatives. One just needs to look at foodstuffs. One needs to just look at Mitre 10. They're exceptional. They're exceptional retailers. They're world class, and they're exceptionally well run cooperatives. Because they run a disciplined business. They've put clarity at the forefront of everything that they do, and they've embraced the view that ownership is shared. And I think that if you sit back and you look at that, a lot of people, because New Zealand's very franchise heavy as well, and I think a lot of people think that the franchise model is the way to go. But the truth is that, or in my mind, the truth is that in a cooperative, you've got more opportunity to shape your own destiny, opportunity to control the journey that you're on, and more opportunity to build sustainability and legacy than what you do within a franchise.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much for that, Norman. Do you have any final words that you would like to share with the listeners about HRV or about the process of converting to a co-op at all?
We've gone through this process, and we're 6 months into it, and I think that we've done exceptionally well, or through the change, and done exceptionally well for our members, and we're really excited by the future. HRV has got a really important role to play in New Zealand around making homes healthier for all Kiwis, and we've got this group of members that are really keen to do it and really keen to grow, and at the same time as doing that, are really keen to learn more about being cooperative. So probably the one thing that I do say is the help from somebody like yourself, being part of New Zealand Co-op, and looking for help, and not being afraid to ask for help from the outside, from people that have got cooperative experiences, is vitally important. And we realize that. And so we're really appreciative of everybody that's given us the assistance. And if anybody needs or would like advice or a chat, we're always available, because it's always good to share once you've received or to receive because you give. And so that's who we are. We want to make all Kiwi homes healthier together. And we think that the approach that we have of, being able to give and receive and be open to conversation is vitally important, because that is part of what makes not only a healthy home, but a healthy New Zealand.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly the cooperative principle of cooperation amongst cooperatives that you've described there. So, yeah, we really, really appreciate that. And no doubt I shall be sending some people your way for a conversation, Norman.
Cannot wait.
Amazing. Well, Norman, thank you. So this conversation has really made it clear that co-op ownership isn't a leap of faith. It's really a considered response to a real business challenge. And also, I guess that co-ops aren't an alternative economy, but they're really a viable ownership choice alongside others. For many listening, the most important takeaway might simply be that ownership can be designed, doesn't have to be inherited. Thank you again for listening to Co-op Leader Conversations.